Fun guy, what's up, baby?
What it do, baby?
Yeah, you already know.
Last season was bittersweet for the Los Angeles Clippers. On one hand, they accomplished something that had never been done in franchise history. They finally made it to a conference finals. But on the other hand, the so-called Clippers curse showed up once again. This team was in great position to actually make it to the finals and would have been favored to win the whole thing. But late in Game 4 of the second round against the Utah Jazz, Kawhi Leonard suffered a partially torn ACL. Nobody besides the Clippers knew how bad the injury was at the time. The team just announced that he was day-to-day with a knee sprain. It wasn't until after the Clippers were eliminated when the basketball world knew how bad the injury really was. And that's unfortunate for the Clippers. Kawhi was playing almost the best he's ever played during this playoff run. He showed why he's a top 5 player. He was an absolute monster in the first round against the Dallas Mavericks, dominating on the offensive end, and eventually took on the challenge of guarding Luka Doncic down the stretch, putting together one of the most impressive two-way performances in recent playoff history. His numbers were unreal in that playoff series. He averaged around 32 points and shot nearly 70% from the field. He did that for the whole series, a series that went 7 games. The way the Clippers were clicking on offense and defense against the Utah Jazz, I don't believe any team left in the playoffs at the time could have beaten this Clippers team at full strength. Nobody. But when Kawhi went down, nothing much was expected from this Clippers team going forward. But the rest of the players raised their game, and they still look like one of the best teams in the West. Some of the numbers actually suggest that the Clippers actually played better without Kawhi Leonard. The Clippers outscored their opponents by 49 points when Kawhi Leonard was off the court. The trio of Paul George, Nicholas Batum, and Reggie Jackson posted a plus 15 net rating in the playoffs, which ranked first in the NBA amongst all trios who played at least 300 minutes. Paul George and Reggie Jackson were the ones that carried the team when Kawhi went down. If anyone on the Clippers needed redemption last season, it was Paul George. He played up to the level that many thought he could and should reach in the playoffs. The Pandemic Pete joke should be over with. This guy rose to the occasion in multiple playoff games. The Clippers made history this season by making the conference finals for the first time, and that doesn't happen without PG-13. He played like an alpha dog. With the series tied at 2 games apiece and facing an intense crowd in Utah, Paul George had a statement game. This was arguably the most impressive game in his career. PG led the Clippers with 37 points, 16 rebounds, and 5 assists to give the Clippers the edge in that series. Reggie Jackson looked like he was on the verge of finding his way out of the league a year ago. His play in the bubble was just as disappointing as Paul George, but Jackson had the most surprising performance of any player in the playoffs in my opinion. He had a solid regular season, but he looked like a completely different player in the postseason. Every series, he played better and better and better. Even with PG and Kawhi on the court with him, Jackson played with the confidence and the command like he was a max player. He pushed the tempo when the team needed a boost, hit timely shots, and even made important stops on defense. He took his game to another level in every playoff series. He averaged 15 points against Dallas, 18 points against Utah, and 20 points against the Phoenix Suns. Jackson was probably the main reason why Rondo didn't get as many minutes throughout the playoffs. For the Clippers to remain close to the top of the Western Conference, Reggie Jackson has to bring his breakout performance from last year's playoffs to this upcoming regular season. Kawhi's injury not only came at a bad time during the playoff run, but a bad time for his status of next season. He suffered the injury in mid-June, and it was a partial tear. No 2 injuries are fully alike, but Spencer Dinwiddie had the same injury in late December, and reports indicate that he could have been able to return to the NBA Finals had the Brooklyn Nets made it that far. The same recovery could have Leonard back around the All-Star break, but with Kawhi's cautious approach to injuries in the past, there's a good possibility that he could miss the entire year. And the Clippers might be just as hesitant, if not more, to put Kawhi on the court next season. This summer they made a big investment in the 2-time NBA champion. The team and Kawhi Leonard agreed to a 4-year, $176 million contract to stay in LA. This agreement marks another important moment for the franchise, just like with the extension of Paul George. It was very crucial for the organization to keep them long term to finally accomplish the ultimate goal of winning their first championship. I believe it's more likely that Kawhi doesn't play next season, but anything is possible. But make no mistake, the Clippers are still a top 10 team in the league even without their best player. The talent and the chemistry is there for this team to compete with the top teams in the league. They will ultimately need Kawhi to win a championship, but for the regular season, PG and the crew is more than capable of competing for home court advantage in the first round of the Western Conference playoffs. The Clippers have a lot of depth at the wing position to try to make up for the loss of their best player. Terrence Mann and Luke Kennard are two of those guys. Mann proved he can be an impact player in the league in the regular season, but the playoffs proved he can be a starter. When his number was called, Mann stepped up and delivered. His signature performance in the playoffs was Game 6 against the Utah Jazz. Mann put up an unexpected 39 points to help send the Clippers to their first Western Conference Finals. He will be given even more opportunities this upcoming season, and I expect his best season so far in his young career. Luke Kennard didn't get that much run early in the playoffs, some point to his defensive limitations. But Kennard is a very capable offensive player. He's an underrated playmaker, and he shot 44% from 3 in the regular season and 41 in the playoffs. As good as he is on offense, he just doesn't have the physical tools or foot speed to hold up on defense in isolations. That's why you really don't want him to be one of your starters. But coming off the bench is a perfect role for him. Batum ended up being buried on the bench in Charlotte in his last couple of years with that team. His career was basically left for dead, but as soon as he signed with the Clippers and started playing, he looked like the same player he was when he played for the Portland Trail Blazers. This guy actually led the team in total minutes played. The same guy who the Hornets thought wasn't worthy of giving minutes to in his last season in Charlotte. Batum became a glue guy for the Clippers. He provided some much needed ball movement to an offense that became a little ISO heavy. His spot up shooting and cutting was also a welcome sight. With Marcus Morris dealing with a lot of injuries, Batum was more than capable stepping into the starting lineup and giving consistent production. Not only was it important to re-sign Kawhi Leonard, but bringing back players like Reggie Jackson and Nicholas Batum was also important to keep the Clippers in the mix at the top of the Western Conference. The Clippers made a bold move when they traded away fan favorite Patrick Beverley and Rajon Rondo for Eric Bledsoe. Bledsoe is obviously a better overall player than both of those guys, but you do lose a lot with Rondo and Beverley. Rondo is not the same player he once was, and playoff Rondo never did show up for this Clippers team, but his basketball IQ and leadership is second to none. And Beverley will also be missed, especially from a culture and locker room standpoint. This move could be more financially motivated than anything. The Clippers will save more than $30 million in luxury tax payments this year. And looking forward beyond this upcoming season, Bledsoe only has a partial guarantee of $4 million for the 2022-23 season, which gives the Clippers a little more flexibility if they don't want to keep him long term. This very well could be another one-season stop for Bledsoe, but he still can be a productive player. Even though his defense slipped a lot last season with the Pelicans, he should be better with better defenders around him. This was a solid move for this team, at least for the regular season. Serge Ibaka should be making his return after missing half the season last year. Ibaka sat out 30 straight regular season games with back issues. He did return for the Clippers' final 2 regular season games, and he actually played Game 1 and Game 2 against the Dallas Mavericks. But he was sidelined for the next 7 playoff games before the Clippers officially shut him down for the playoffs. Ibaka gives great rim protection and the ability to stretch the floor with his outside shooting. Zubac gave good minutes at times, but other times he was a liability on defense. A healthy Ibaka is a clear upgrade from Zubac. But how much does Ibaka have left in the tank? And there's a good chance that Ibaka won't be the same effective player he was before the back issues. Justice Winslow will have another chance to try to resurrect his NBA career. The former 10th overall pick was a very impactful player for the Miami Heat early in his career, and he looked like he was on his way to being an all-star. But his career has been ruined by multiple injuries, and this could be his last chance to prove to the league that he can stay healthy. Kawhi's injury could be a blessing to a player like Winslow. If he can come in and give good minutes off the bench when he gets the opportunity, and most importantly stay healthy, this team could be the launching pad to his second act of his career. The talent on this team is deep, very deep. How many teams could lose their best player and still be able to compete with the best teams in the league? The way this team played without Kawhi Leonard in the playoffs was very impressive, and they proved they can handle adversity, unlike in the bubble in 2020. Paul George has always been great in the regular season. I expect the same this upcoming season. He looked like an alpha dog in the playoffs, and he could be in the MVP discussion throughout the whole season. The question is, will Kawhi Leonard be back in time to make the Clippers a legit championship contender? I have the Clippers finishing with the 5th seed with a 49-33 record. You can make the case that this team was better without Kawhi Leonard in the playoffs, but everybody knows they need him to win a championship. But this team should be just as dangerous in the regular season as they ever have been. This is one of the deepest teams in the league, and regardless if Kawhi comes back or not, this team will be in the playoffs, no doubt.